John. So John has traveled all the way from UK. John is the CEO of BCS Learning and Development and has spent 30 years in achieving success in international information technology, skills and development industries, passionate about success. He has a genuine fascination with the integration of learning and technology for the long-term benefit of people and development of organization. Latterly, John was the MD of Reed Learning, where he was able to use his analysis, leadership, and portfolio skills to successfully implement a £30 million outsourcing contract to deliver all of the RBS learning and development requirements in the UK. John, welcome on stage. Thank you. So we get into our next section, and that's our keynote panel. And something, again, which we all conceptualize together in terms of what we should discuss in this keynote, what makes the most relevance to you guys. And we thought about this whole title of Future is Now, the business analysis ecosystem that we need to create. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. So I just want to establish the context here of this whole topic. I think the technology is changing so fast that all of us as BAs need to keep up with the change equally fast, or even faster maybe. So we are able to go and talk to our clients in that lingo and make sure we are able to offer the right solutions that they are looking for the business problems that they face on a daily basis. So for that purpose, I think having the right ecosystem where all of us get the opportunity to upskill ourselves as fast as possible, this ecosystem has to play a very, very critical role. And that's where you see some of the leaders sitting on the dais here playing a very, very important role. So Dr. SANDHYA, I'll start with you. Sector Skill Council of NASSCOM has been in charge of all the skill transformation, all the need assessment, and what is needed for us to be a best outsourcing destination for the world. What are your plans? What are you guys doing to help this ecosystem?
Thank you for that question, Ashish. Basically, the first thing that we have come to recognize as the Chamber of Commerce and the Sector Skill Council for skilling and providing the sustainable talent pool for our requirements here in India as well as globally. Because though we are based and housed in India here, we are a global enterprise because of the nature of our members, some of them who are there on the board behind me. At the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, we have seen three before. One we started off with steam engines, and the other one with electricity, and the third one was with information technology, and the fourth now is with basically with mesh devices and machine learning, and we move into other areas like artificial and augmented reality, where there's going to be 3D printing, IoT. So it's going to be the connectivity that's going to change the way we live, learn, and work. So having said that, we would like to actually say what's the future of jobs and what's the nature of work? How are we going to envisage and see how our business enterprises, small, medium, and large, going to be able to change, and how are they going to address the human resource within to actually address the business requirements? For all of this, there's a critical factor, and that's business analysis. The huge amount of data that we have needs to be analyzed with appropriate tools and then put models around it, and then we need to basically say, this is going to be the nature of work, and this is how people who are already in the employee base need to be retrained or reskilled to be able to address. We're going to see polarization of jobs where you're going to have high-end requirements that are going to be addressed with an automated process. A high-end process which will continue to have the human requirement, and a low-end process which will be common norms which are going to be automated. And in the middle, we're going to have things that are going to be meeting the requirements of both the high-end complex probability as well as the low-end. But in all of this, we're not saying what is going to be the rate of change. It's very critical. Earlier on, these technologies came into play around about a particular time and took about a gestation period of 5 to 10 years. Now it's happening in 6 months. So we're questioning the very relevance of the educational program we have, the training provider processes that we have, the training that happens in the HR community, and how are people, both the leaders, middle management, and the entry-level people going to adjust. So towards this end, that's where we have talked about this participation, partnership, collaboration, so that we can actually sit together, think things through, and address it. So what the government of India does is, to cut the long story short, is recognize this. So they have identified 40 industry growth areas. It could be automotive, electronics, manufacturing, even areas like BFSI, telecom, logistics. It could be gem and jewelry, media and entertainment, the list goes on. They have been identified as growth sectors. So by 2050, which was the third milestone, the first being 2020, we are saying, how are we going to collaborate? How are these businesses going to actually be impacted by technology as an enabler as well as a platform? Then that's when the business analysis comes in and says, how is things going to change? How are we going to collaborate and work together? So the government in India has actually proactively come together and put together the Ministry of Skills and Entrepreneurship for the first time in 67 years. It has actually taken skilling away from 23 other ministries and tried to focus it in one area so that they can be a proactive, focused approach. All the industry sectors have become unique models. Say, for example, automotive is SIAM, ACMA, and FADA have come together. Under electronics, you have Elsina, MEHTA, and ISA coming together. So this country now sports one industry sector, one voice, standardizations of jobs. So what can happen is, to the global community, we are saying India is a happening place. India is a place where you can actually expect quality and standards of outcomes from individuals or companies working here. So this is the basic ecosystem change that we have been able to bring together the last 3 to 4 years here.
Wow. This means a lot, Dr. Sandhya. Thank you for explaining it in such short form, but I can understand the amount of work that you do. By the way, I sent a note to Dr. Sandhya on Monday morning, which was the day when she was on vacation, and I got a reply at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, just telling that. So you can imagine the amount of effort that's going behind the scene, guys, for the health and the career progression that we are all going to get. Let me move on to Stephen. Stephen, the relevance, I think, for IIBA is the global standard. What are your thoughts? How do you think, from an IIBA standpoint, the value that we're going to generate, and also, what does it mean to you when you're here trying to establish and being part of this ecosystem?
Thank you very much, Ashish. The global standard is one of those challenging but very important disciplines and opportunity for an organization like IIBA to ensure that we've listened, heard, and understood not only industry, but those who are practicing the BA analysis in everyday business. And what is important as we look at the standards of practice is that there's a recognition in industry, recognition in academic institutions, and recognition amongst those who are practitioners that we have a standards of practice that is accepted and identified. And it can be a challenge, but it's been important to IIBA over the years to make sure that that is clearly defined. And we do that through the outreach across the globe when we actually put together the BABOK, the body of knowledge. It wasn't IIBA who actually are the authors. It is you who are the authors. Those people around the world who told us what the standards need to be, should be, and as we move forward, it has to have some constant dynamic and real-time changes as the industry changes as well. It's also important, Ashish, for us to be able to look at what the industry is saying to us in terms of our certifications. And to that point and that end, the multi-level certification this year will be launched with 4 different levels of certification. That was to allow for those who are sort of entering into the space and perhaps aren't sure if they actually have those skill sets, the opportunities, and the career interest to move forward. It's also about industry looking at filling gaps and important demands of what industry is asking for today for tomorrow. And as we move forward with the levels 2, 3, and 4, to also look at the different levels of competencies, industry is insisting that HR departments have a better line of vision and sight to what the requirements are for that particular job, need, and demands. And it is our important responsibility to make sure that we can deliver that. And we also make it an important opportunity for IIBA to reach out to the corporate community. That corporate community are our eyes and ears on the ground. They allow for us to make sure that that relevant knowledge is going to be infused into our certification processes, into our multi-level competency model, and as we move forward. So it is a real-time model. It's also a standards of practice that is dynamic. And as it moves forward, it's important for us to have collaborations such as with the NASSCOM collaboration that we signed today and others.
Thank you, Stephen. John, it's your turn. And you come from Europe. You come from UK. I have a very specific question. One, of course, you've got your bases outside in multiple countries. That experience, plus working with some of the corporations who've got bases here. What value do you think? How do you think you be part of the ecosystem?
So I think BTS's role here is we understand Europe. We understand the fears and the psychologies of Europe. They're worrying about things like 3D printing. They recognize that that's going to take about £1.2 billion in lost IP, because you're just going to be able to print the stuff. You won't need to have it made, so why have the IP? So they're worrying about that. They're worrying about, because the IT sector formed and has been in Europe longer, the IT departments had managed to build castle walls around their data and all of those kind of things. And one of the great advantages India has is because it's slightly newer, it's not had all of that stuff. And so on one part, UK and Europe are terribly resource poor. It's the huge advantage that India has, and it's the opportunity that is growing, and with NASSCOM has proved can be taken part of. For that to happen, and for the European corporations and industries to trust, in effect, BTS has to be part of this, because we help authenticate part of that trust. Because we're the Institute for IT, us and our groups and our communities taking part in what happens in India and the UK means a lot to the UK and enables outsourcing. It enables those things to happen. Because you've got things like, I was at Philips about 2 weeks ago and talking to some of their senior management, and their biggest fear is they can't invent things and do the disruptive technologies that can happen here. And they were saying their biggest fear is that a small Indian organization will invent some health app that will take away massive parts of their business. What Philips, Google, Facebook, Oracle do, and you see it continually, is they buy those organizations up. That's both an opportunity and a threat. And actually the BCS role is part of that bridge. It's part of understanding that. But our role is helping the ecosystem. It's, as Stephen said, our role is to identify current practice, best practice, next practice, to use the community to identify what really is that next practice, and to help it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Sandhya, I'll come back to you for one specific question. Now, from the policy standpoint, what you just explained is massive. So its execution has to be on dot, because that's where I think the trick lies, if the execution is done well. What are you guys thinking? How are you going about the execution of this large-scale skill transformation? And by the way, as much as I understand, it is probably the largest skill transformation initiative anywhere in the world.
Right. I would second that, but it brings us problems. So if you look at it as a problem, or if you take it on as a challenge and include the risks in it, then you probably demystify it.
Yes, that's where business analysis comes in.
So the problem today is that today we are at about 3.7 million direct employees here through NASSCOM members. And through our business analysis, considering the disruptive technologies that are coming to play, we have been able to forecast for the next 3 years, not beyond that, is a total ecosystem of about an additional ecosystem, about 6.2 million people, direct employment, and 3 times that as indirect. So let me break that up. It is about 4.1 million that the analysts have told us is because of areas where technology disruption will permeate other industry sectors. And the existing ecosystem and the existing service lines will create just about another 2.1, an increment of about 0.2 to every year, which is fresh hires, and about a little more than about 1.2 million will come from retraining. The World Economic Forum says about 70% of existing employee base has to be reskilled for them to be relevant to tomorrow's or today's technology requirements. In India, we predict that's going to be about 30% we have to retrain. So those people, that retraining plus the fresh hires will be about a 2.1 million or so for the next 3 years, and about a 3 to 4.1 million would be new opportunities which come from the existing programs that is run by Digital India, Make in India, Manufacture in India. Then you have to actually have smart cities and all of that. So what has been said in this economic forum is, in the World Economic, that for the next 50 years, the things that are really going to survive is going to be computing and business analysis and big data. Because the ability for you to continuously preempt what's going to take place as change and keep your businesses afloat is critical. So for us to take this big data, the velocity with which it's flowing, the veracity of it, and the volume of it is humongous for you to be able to analyze it in the pharmaceutical space, in the healthcare or media entertainment, or in the construction industry, banking services, any place that you're going to touch base with. You're going to find that your ability as a business analyst for you to be able to take the whole picture from project management space, from an intuitive space, put data structures amongst this, build models, predict, and say what's going to happen is going to be very, very critical. So the ability for us to actually nurture these skills in individuals is very critical. Now, concepts of business analysis, business analyst, design thinking on those lines is alien to many of our students. We think design thinking has to go as early as the pre-schooling area, that is the middle school, from O levels to A levels, or 9th to 12th class. It starts there, to think out of the box, to be not just to have problem solving, but to have critical thinking, which is a step over problem solving, which basically says if this is the problem today, for you to be able to preempt and say what's going to be there for tomorrow. So we're thinking that the whole ecosystem, which is a 3-year and a 4-year degree, is there relevance in that? So what the government and NASSCOM with the other sector skill councils are saying is bring in job roles. They are called qualification packs. Bring that training into the universities and colleges and third-party training providers. So we have got what is called the Bachelors of Vocation, which integrates these programs. So you could be a BTech degree holder or a BA or a BSc or a BCom, but also come out job ready. And you visit this ecosystem every 6 months as when it's required. So this implementation runs through all the universities. Then it's coming through the training provider community, which is the unorganized group, which is now trying to get organized. So all of this is coming with state intervention as well as support from various chambers of commerce from other industry sectors. Yeah. So this implementation means training or retraining about 25 million faculty and addressing around 16 million students every year.
Wow.
So there is business across the world. So that's huge business. So when he said what it is, it's a problem so huge. I think the only way for us to address this is through collaboration, because not only are we addressing the domestic requirement, but we think with what the Prime Minister says, we echo that India could be the warehouse for human resource at transnational standards for global requirement as well.
And can I just bring in on that? So in the UK, we 2 years ago, we changed the curriculum so that computer science was a key part of maths, English, technology. The technology was key, and the BCS was actually critical in bringing it into the curriculum across every secondary school. That caused us a problem, which we're still facing today, which is we don't have the teachers to teach computing science, they can teach digital literacy just about. But technology and computer science, there's a big problem, and it's something that really needs to be focused on. The other thing that we've played a part in, and this is what the BCS does, is help bring about digital apprenticeships. And so what we're finding in the UK is 3-year degrees are going out of flavor because it's you start the process and technology is completely changed by the time you come out the far end of it.
Absolutely.
So the government in the UK is actually placing a levy onto large organizations because they can afford it, and encouraging them to have vocational apprenticeships, so vocational training. And that means for the students, you'll earn while you learn, rather than in the States and in the UK now, that people end up with £40,000 worth of debt, which is a horrendous amount of money. Just try and calculate that into rupees. What's that? 280,000, some horrendous number of debt before you start work. That's just horrendous. That's not a good way to start work. So there is a huge requirement, I would suggest, both here in India, and it's great to hear that it's recognized and the government are doing about it. The UK government have done something about it. It brings secondary challenges, which is you do not have the staff, we do not have the staff to help train. And so one of the challenges is to help that endemically happen, because to actually have the talent here, you've got to bring it in, and you've got to force large organizations, NTT Data, Accenture, Capgemini, whoever, to help that process. So it goes back to, it's all about the ecosystem.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Sandhya, thank you once again for giving us the opportunity to be part of this change. I knew that this was a large change, but probably did not know the scale of it. So thank you very much again.
I should say misery loves company, but so be it. We have to work together. It's a win-win situation only if we can collaborate. It's too big a problem independently.
Stephen, I want to come back to you again. Why India? You know, why do you think this is important, and what are IIBA's plans for India?
Well, I think we've just heard the opportunity and the challenge, and it sounds like you need some BAs to help out with this as well, so I think that's important. I think it was really great insight over 2 years ago when we were developing our own strategic plan to understand the opportunities here. And I think it's only during the last year when we came here we truly understood, and that was at the encouragement of ASHISH actually, who said you actually have to come here to understand what the needs, demands, and the opportunities are. And to be able to harness the opportunities and to be able to prepare for the sort of the great demand and industry demand that is being asked for, this is something that IIBA takes very seriously in supporting and making sure that we are very much aware of what is taking place here. The scale and the magnitude of what is happening in India is also a great incubator for us when we look at what is else going to happen elsewhere and is happening elsewhere in the world. I think it was also an opportunity for us to look at India has many, many industries and commerce here that is reflective of other demands elsewhere in the world globally. And so what we learn here is a window of what's going to happen elsewhere in the world. And I think while we are a large not-for-profit organization, we need to be able to be nimble and have that speed and agility to be able to prepare. And we owe it to those students who are out there to make sure that we understand what is taking place in industry today and prepare them for the future.
Just to add to what he said,
Please,
Stephen said, and to reflect what John has said, is that you might have small individuals or starting up startups, and they would basically be able to make apps that are going to overturn huge enterprises that have been established. It's absolutely spot on, because just 2.5 years ago, we started the program for the 10,000 startups. And today, with NASSCOM, we have now become the 3rd largest in the globe for startups, with 4,900 startups that have happened, and it's just scattering, it is growing. So obviously what we are finding is there's huge, there's this huge scope for ideas, and there is an opportunity for people to nurture them, venture cap them, and make this work. And therefore, we need to actually have more people put some analytics into this and say, what does it mean for large companies? Will they be able to stand tall or continue to stay structured the way they are? Is the construct going to change? And how does that actually impact the student or the supply side? Because the large companies in India were almost responsible for almost 70 to 80% of the on-campus hires. Now, if their construct is going to change because of technology disruption, and the small and medium companies are going to take a key role, you don't need that many students. So we're saying, what's going to be the nature of how these students are going to adjust to the ecosystem? What's going to be the employability scope? So we're quite interested, actually, I'm throwing it on your behalf to say, how does the other part of the world view this?
I think that means that business analysis is even more important because it's at the heart of it. It touches one of the troubles, one of the things I didn't mention earlier is one of the risks going on in the world, and we all see it, is that misuse of data is getting worse and worse and worse. Interestingly enough, large organizations pay more money for small organizations that actually have terms and conditions that allow people to misuse their data. It's a bad thing. It's just a corporate Western thing because the large organizations realize that data is king, and the whole world is moving to that. They want to be the data gurus that curate it and those kind of things. But to have business analysis in being in the education system and being taught the whole way through, and having the small firms, because I don't know the answer whether they're going to be large firms or lots of little small firms, and quite a few large firms are actually organized. Ernst & Young, for example, is organized of, in effect, lots of little firms all glued together and bubbling around. So for education, I think there are some interesting things, but it puts business analysis right at the heart of it, because if you're running a small business, you need business analysis skills to be really successful, I would suggest. So I think that's the take from me on that. It's a great question. The world will have changed massively by 2020, which is not very far away. But business analysis needs to be in the middle of it. And not only in India, I know we're in India, but it's happening in lots and lots of places.
I think it's, as you said, it's not just happening here, and it is the window, though. It allows us to understand the scale here. I think the other thing that it also points to is the importance of being able to balance speed to market with standards of practice.
Yeah.
And this becomes an important challenge, and the way you do that is to make sure that you're linked with industry and making sure that you understand what the needs are, as well as being able to train those in the positions in the academic institutions, in training and consulting firms and so on, so that you continue to stay in touch with each other, because otherwise it becomes a bit of a runaway train. And that's the discipline behind IIBA in terms of making sure that standards of practice, that we are consulting with those who are moving forward, listening to what those demands are, and ensuring that they are reflected in what we're doing, whether it be in a multi-level system or the competencies.
So in one of the implementation practices that we're trying to put forth is that we form communities, or what we call special interest groups, amongst the demand side, the companies, and they get together, and each one of them, rather than nurture a particular standard on their own with regards to business analysis, analytics, and big data or data science, they will now have a community approach and say, this is the collective standard that we recommend. This is very easy for the supply side, which is the schools and colleges, because they don't now have to address the requirements of individual companies, but address an industry standard, both national and international. So I think my message to the community of the demand side would be that they should put forth and say, if you are certified SSE, NASSCOM, IIBA certificate on business analytics, it's preferred. And that messaging is very critical, because that's the pull factor for the student community to actually participate in these programs. And for the student communities and the colleges to be agile enough to constantly look at these standards, because these standards will be evolving constantly. There is no static process anymore. So this ability to manage the change and constantly evolve with what's happening will be critical for both the supply and the demand side. And I think the ability to predict what that's going to be is the business analytics. As John has said, it's going to be the heart of it all.
I also think don't underestimate your power of your voice.
Yes.
Those communities and that network that you are building out there is very, very important. You can help shape and influence what industry and academics institutions are going to be doing and moving forward, because you're on the cutting edge. You play a pivotal role in shaping what's going to happen next. And whether we have chapters that have networking opportunities, but whatever your networking looks like, that's the way you'll stay connected and to be able to influence and shape in industry as well.
So one of the things I would recommend is also that on the website www.sscnasscom.com, we are actually looking for master trainers, and they have to be global players, at least 5 years of work experience. So if you have the ability as well as the content, please connect, because we're just not looking for people in India, but we're going to look through a MOOCs process in consultation and collaboration with IIBA to make this content available online to interested geographies and the people within. But we definitely need the top-notch master trainers. So it's critical that we join hands, because if you know it and you know how to crack it, I think you need to come together as one force, and that's when things will happen. So we'll be definitely having the content made available a few months from now. It'll reach the markets both online and offline, and if you're interested, do collaborate on the online process. We should be able to do that for you.
So Dr. Sandhya, another question, just to follow up on this. It's a massive change, and the scale that you just mentioned is humongous. I think corporate have to play a much critical role compared to what they have played till now, because academia is still looking up to people like you, people like IIBA, people like BCS, and even the corporate, for them to really know the relevance of the skills that are needed for them to produce, right? So what kind of role are you envisaging from a policy transformation standpoint that corporate should be playing in this ecosystem?
So that's one of the things is the reason why, from my point of view, the Chamber of Commerce for IT and BPM in India has taken on the dual role and has an additional hat of being the sector skill council that creates a change rather than nominate or launch another society for this. Has been done by the others. So internalizing it, they have said a message through very strongly that all members have to contribute, be a part of it, and that's how we are actually working on it. So the strength lies between that. So the voice of the Sector Skill Council for Skilling is also the voice of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. One the other thing, and I'm just going to change hat, if I look at from entity data standpoint, because I run a global practice, one of the biggest challenge I have faced is finding the right talent. It's not a volume game in business analysis when it comes to, at times, a job or project, because if it's a 20-people project, you probably need just one BA. But that person is a kingpin, because if something goes wrong in the problem identification or solution design, it can rock the boat. So criticality is very high for this whole skill transformation that we're talking here. Do you agree that this scale of transformation will also help India scale up the ladder in terms of being a preferred outsourcing destination? Dr. Sandhya, what do you think? I'll come back to hear all three views.
The fact that we are partnering and collaborating is for the scale purpose, right? So that we can actually send standards which are global, and therefore the human resource certified on global standards will be applicable to other geographies.
Yes.
But the practice that we have is that most of our industry members look to certain campuses in the country to actually be able to supply the standard and the requirement present and future, I think is outdated. The case in point being that the startups that I have come from all parts of the country, and definitely not the so-called urban cities or the set colleges. In India, if you know the word jugaad, it's impromptu innovation, and that's come from every part of the country. It's amazing to see somebody who never you thought, or the college would not even you not go to for a campus hire, has come up with an innovation. And these are kids who are 19-year and 20-year-olds, or even less. We have got hackers who are 13 and 14 years old, because they are cybersecurity experts. And now with data flow and data intervention in every sector, cybersecurity is such a key play. So the way it is we have to spread our wings really wide and far, and because that's the reason why we wanted to scale. The scale is just not, it's an outreach process where our set low-hanging fruit of colleges has to be overcome, and we have to look further if you have to expect innovation to address the challenges of tomorrow.
100% agree with that. One of the challenges with certification, certainly in today's world, is it's usually easier to actually deliver the thing than it is to be certified. Especially formative certifications. You can usually, you can go on a business analysis course, you can learn it, and then you can come out with an output and a training certificate that proves that you've learnt the knowledge. Certainly with some of the things around data, we've got kids who've not gone to college and they're actually doing the thing. They're intuitively learning the models off the net, and they've produced the website and the application and this before they can build a certification. So one of the things that it will absolutely change education and the way education works. And that's one of the things that is going on. It also means that clever summative and synoptic methods of certifying people are more important than formative, formal, multiple choice tests. It's just a great time to be in the business. There are huge opportunities, and I love the fact that kids in bedrooms, you know, one of our largest telecoms was hacked into by a 15-year-old in their bedroom. Now that's because they weren't taking care of the data properly, and they weren't actually having business analysis as the first line of cyber defense, which it should absolutely be. You know, it's one of the things that very rarely happens. Yeah. They don't, firms, large firms, small firms, don't use business analysis to kind of go, where's the threat coming? How can it come? How are people coming in? What's the value? What's the driver? And all of those kind of things. But I love the fact that a 15-year-old kid could just take down one of our major telecoms organizations. I think it's brilliant. I love that. It's allowing it. And the fact that that's available in here, it just means we've got to change the educational construct, change the ecosystem, and that's something that requires not just IIBA, not just NASSCOM. It does require the whole world, because actually to be an outsource destination, and then actually for Canada to trust, UK to trust, US to trust, then actually just having these levels is important for us to be involved. And that's part of it. But we have a societal goal at BCS, which is to make IT good for society. So and that's global. It's nothing to do with the UK. That's global. So that's one of the reasons I'm sat on this stage, just to help identify the risks and the skills gaps. We have frameworks and competency frameworks. They're actually very well used in large firms. The SANDHYA framework. You can see it under it's widely used. It's open for use. Anybody can take the basic version of it and use it for free. It's there. It involves business analysis. It has it right throughout it. And it has all of those levels and everything. And that's just part of what we do, you know, because we want people to thrive in a digital society, and we want to recognize professionalism. What professionalism is and counts, what it was 10 years ago was a person with a certificate and been working there for 35 years. That's not the case. You know, look at Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not sure he's even 35 yet. do you know what I mean? And certainly Elon Musk didn't grow up through that route. You look at his career, and yet he's one of the most successful people on the planet. Business analysis is key.
Business analysis is key. Thank you.
So, one of the just points is to let you know, it's just like you have a European framework, and there is a UK skills framework, which is quite close to SANDHYA, and we have a Canadian framework and an Australian framework. So India has also launched a national skills qualification framework. So it's been long overdue, but that actually maps employment skills to academic profiles, and also shows a pathway for somebody who can irrespective of his academic background, be ascertained job ready.
Fantastic.
And the other thing it does also is to help map it with an international framework, so that if you are hiring a business analyst somewhere in the UK, you know that this is the same standard here in India. So it makes it easy for you to understand the background and the competency required when you hire.
And that's exactly what India needs. It needs that mapping to stuff that is already existing and already in use. I mean, SANDHYA is in use in tens of thousands of organizations in the West, right across the US, Europe.
Wow, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's open the floor for questions and see what our community has to ask. Guys, over to you. Do we have mics on the dais, please? Yeah. So maybe I'll hand over one mic now. Yeah. So question, please.
Good morning, guys. This is to Stephen. I think over the course of the discussion, you've been highlighting on the IIBA being relevant to what the industry expects from its practitioners. Now, we've seen that over the course of last few years, most of the companies moved from a plan-driven approach to a change-driven approach, more from a waterfall model to an agile model. So how is IIBA keeping itself relevant in the agile space, given that the PMI has come up with the ACP certification that will, set the standards for agile practitioners across the globe? So what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think one of the things that we are doing is we are working with the Agile Alliance, in terms of ensuring that specific areas and practices that are of extreme importance in business are actually part of our extension of what we are doing, not only in our certification and our competencies, but outside of that. And I think it's also important when we look at these standards of practice that we have to make sure that we look at not only core standards, but there are sort of evolving standards and evolving practices. And the pendulum will continue to swing back and forth depending on the demands, depending on what industry is looking for, and depending on what it is that needs to be applied to. So I think it again, has to stay fluid, has to stay dynamic, and we continue to make sure that we have our outreach to organizations that are also involved in these different areas and disciplines. One of the things that we've done in addition to NASSCOM is an MOU with BCS. IIBA is not the specialist in the area of computer sciences. And one of the things that we need to look at is to look at what are the similarities in the business analysis practices and our certifications and the skill sets that are brought to the table. So this is a constant and fluid and real-time model that we need to look at on an ongoing basis with industry. In addition to that, we look at industry to be able to inform us. And so we have a large corporate membership that will continue to inform and work with us. Another area that we are looking into and engage right now is a research and impact study that allows us to go to corporate and say, what is important to you today? What are the standards and practices that you are insisting upon, and where are the gaps that need to be filled, so that we can speak directly to industry? And that is a research and impact study that you can look forward to hearing more about later in October.
I would just add one thing to that, because at the BCS we have both a BA curriculum that has 4 levels, just because they map together. But we also have an agile curriculum. The one thing, we also have an agile practice, because we have quite a lot of software developers, and so we have a BA practice. Business analysis in an agile world isn't that different to business analysis in a waterfall world. Actually, what you're seeing, I think, right across all organizations is this idea of projects being special and different. Projects are becoming everyday life. And that's really what Agile is really about. It's really about really good communications and everybody being a thought leader inside their firm.
So from business analysis point of view, if I may add 2 cents here, I think one of the key difference that I see is the amount of clarity a business analyst may have when he's working in an agile project versus a waterfall. In waterfall, everything is sacrosanct, you get everything done, so you know exactly where the requirements are before you start with anything else, versus agile, where there is a fluidity.
How many things do we take on today where you're starting day one and the world hasn't changed around you by day 10? Every project, the idea that we are still doing waterfall sacrosanct projects is really interesting. I really question any firm as to why they would be doing that.
That's why waterfall projects see 80% change requests.
Absolutely. It's like those firms who won't have moved all their data to the cloud and aren't operating in the cloud by 2018. They won't exist in 2020. They just won't exist. The imperative there is that business analysts understand the firm. To be a chartered fellow of the BCS, you have to pass something called the BOC, which is the breadth of knowledge test across IT. There's the same thing in effect for business analysis. You've got to understand the business you're in. And therefore, to be able to agilely come in and out of those agile stand-up sessions, our BA practice comes in, they understand our business, and they come in and they're able to interject and operate at that level because they understand the business. They don't just understand this narrow little micro project thing. Because if you understand that narrow little micro project thing, you may perfectly build something that sinks 5 seconds later because the world's changed.
Excellent. Any other question, please?
Yep. So thank you for the knowledge that you are giving with regards to upscaling the new talent that we are talking about. But the question I have is, what is it, to an extent this question has been addressed for the query that we got just now, that how are we taking care with the agile movement. But my question is, the ecosystem that we have, the people who are sitting around here with us, how do you see the growth for them, and how do you perceive that organizations are also having the standards and metrics or mechanisms so that the BAs within the organizations are also growing? So new members, you have already said that you have a faculty development program, you have trained the trainer concept in place, but what about the members who are actually currently working on the ground with the organizations?
So I will take it.
Yeah.
I can take it from a BCS angle. Sure. So the process that in the BCS world that we have for members growing and developing is that once we've recognized any level of expertise, we're actually putting in place models for those members to be able to benefit and actually fiscally benefit from mentoring other BAs to develop them and drive. So it's any organization, whether it's IIBA, NASSCOM, or ourselves, have to build self-funding cycles. So things that create compelling engagements where members like yourself come in, we start an activity, we fund it, you then get to a level of expertise and you bring the next level of expertise in behind you. We can't do it, and it can't be. Master trainers are good for education, but they're not good in general business. General business has to self-fulfill itself. Otherwise, it will fail. We can't do that. Just is my personal view. We can have professional IT training firms and those kind of things. They're really important, and they kickstart the thing. But actually, to continue that, and for BAs to be developing and becoming thought leaders, that has to be from within the community. And our role is to enable that, whether it's fiscally or recognition-wise.
Well, I think it also ties in with what I said earlier. You know, when we extend the multi-level certification, this is allowing those individuals who are engaging in business, and we may have someone who's a very senior enterprise architect in business analysis, and this allows for that, the career path, the opportunities, and the infusion of what is net new in the space. the rich context that students bring to organizations, and then why organizations hire that, that bright student out of university and colleges, is because they are providing that window of opportunity into what's going to take place in the future. So from IIBA's point of view, the level 1 is an opportunity for capturing that rich knowledge and that insight into that new window as they move forward, and then to be able to progress. And then when we talk about that ecosystem, it also allows us to have some of those foundation pieces that John was talking about earlier. As much as we talk about the speed and the, how rapid things are moving forward, we have to still pull it back to a discipline and the standards. It's kind of like wheels on a car. We have to make sure they exist. Otherwise, we can't share in common what that practice will be. And if we understand that, then we truly can move forward. What is happening with the BA is it is an evolving, not only discipline, but a profession. And that is important, and that is great insight for those who are looking to this as a full-time, long-term career. The future is not only bright, it's demanding your specialties be brought to the table and how you can advance and become more strategic in helping inform businesses and how they operate.
Your question is absolutely perfect. Most of our focus has been on entry level, where we thought 80% of the hire was relevant. Now we're looking at the middle management, which needs to be upskilled and done so very quickly. A task force has been instituted by NASSCOM. They're looking at the areas that require this, especially business analysts. So that's one of the reasons why we have partnering with other international bodies so that there could be a joint certification. It will be delivered online, so that's the platform and the delivery and the recognized certification. So that certification has to be recognized by your own company, as also offer you international pathways. So that's going to happen in the next 5 to 6 months, and it will be available to you. We'll inform everybody.
I've just got in danger.
Thank you.
Guys, Mike.
That's a very interesting question. I represent Pfizer, one of the leading technology solution providers for BFSI sector. This is a challenge that most companies face. What do we do? How do we encourage the mid-level managers to upskill themselves? So we thought of that about 2-3 years back. In one of the BA convention, we came out with a model. For a business analyst, he can be a business analyst as a domain consultant, or he can be a business system analyst with technology and project management thrown into it. So there are 2 different streams. And a BA has to continuously evolve himself to reach either the pinnacle of one stream or the other. But the industry expects a person to be really competent in all the areas. He must have the project management skills. He must also have the skills to understand what the industry looks for, not just on the domain side. So having understood that, we created a couple of programs within our company to take care of this particular question. We have what we call the Aspiring BA program, where we bring in people from streams other than the business analysis. There are QAs, there are developers, there are testers. These people then can enroll themselves to become business system analysts. There we have the curriculum that is designed for that purpose, because the focus will be more on the domain side, more on the business analysis side. And the pure business analyst, if they want to learn more on the technical side or the project management side, we have created a separate curriculum where the intervention will be more on the acquiring project management skills and technology skills. So both the streams have to run side by side. You cannot have a pure business analyst that will know only the domain side. You cannot have a pure system analyst that will know only the technology side. There has to be a combination. So we have created multiple steps through which a person will be reaching what we call the solution architect. No, he knows both the technology and the domain and the business analysis skills. So this is what we have attempted to do in our own small way. So in the last couple of years, we have converted close to 25-30 people who are playing the business system analyst role, where they understand the parts of both the domain side, the technology side, and the project manager side. All the three skills are combined together to create this kind of capabilities within the existing business analysis stream. So this is one of the experience that we have created within our own company.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you for your kind words. I just want to add to this from an ecosystem point of view, and just to answer a question. I think to add to the answers actually that you're getting, I personally feel, when I look at my life as a business analyst, and more than 20 years I've been doing that, my first year was entirely different. There was no IIBA, there was no business analysis education. It was all ad hoc. It was only individual heroism, as I call it in my terms, that made me successful. After that, it was IIBA and all the guidance that was available through the body of knowledge. I see this whole ecosystem giving us a third level of shift now, where the whole alliances that we're talking will provide us the opportunity for us to upskill very quickly, something that does not exist today across. And there are, as Ram said, in his company, he's done some effort in bridging this gap. But really, the companies are doing it in pockets, in their own ways, in the way that works for them. But from an ecosystem point of view, I think that's what mass skilling will help us find out the opportunities, give us the options of the career tracks that we want to have, and then latch on to those opportunities very quickly.
And that's because you fairly quickly, if you are successful at business analysis and are spotting the right things, enter into the domain of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
And leadership is different in different organizations in different ways, as we were talking about yesterday, in fact. And I think that's the key thing, and it is just enabling that opportunity within each of the organizations.
Ashish, sorry, I have a question. Good morning, folks. I have two questions. My name is Lalit, and I come from the Symbiosis Institute of Computer Studies and Research. It's good to have all of you in this panel. I come from the past where I was part of the IT industry, and now here I'm teaching. The Indian IT industry is experiencing turbulence right now. The growth rates are decreasing, and my question to all of you would be, how does the business analyst ecological system, which we are looking at currently, help, or how will it help enhance the Indian IT exports? That's one question, because we are looking at employment rates reducing, we are looking at revenues reducing. That's one question to you all. And the second question I have is, coming from the industry, we all want a single viewpoint of the customer. Here we have BCS, here we have IIBA, here we have NASSCOM. All three of you are seated here together. And I'm a student and I want to make a career in business analyst. What do I look at? Do I look at NASSCOM? Do I look at IIBA? Do I look at BCS? Can I get a single viewpoint what it means to me? Thank you.
Do you want me to take that initially? I mean, one of the reasons I've been in BCS 2.5 years now. Stephen's not been much longer in IIBA, I don't think. And the first thing that we did was pick up the telephone and talk to each other to go, we've both got communities that overlap. Let's work together. Because actually, as professional bodies, our role here is, I have a slightly wider brief, you have a deeper brief. They're both very challenging roles. But one of the reasons we've aligned the curriculum, we are trying to align everything so that we can do our fundamental job of curating and recognition. Yeah? Our roles here are to create professions. In the UK, what that means is created chartered BAs, which we are on the progress to doing, but unfortunately it requires the screen stamp, so that takes a little time. And actually getting government to put it on the pay scales. Because if we get government to put BAs on the pay scales in the UK, the BA becomes a profession almost overnight. And so we are doing lobbying to doing that. But the reason we signed an MOU with IIBA, which says create a BA profession, is almost the first thing on it, isn't it, Stephen? Is because we don't want people to have to pick. Yeah? One organization or another may suit an individual. You don't have to be part of all three. It is a leaning and a tendency, and that's fine. It's about us helping the ecosystem and driving the ecosystem.
Can I add to the answer from a practitioner's point of view? I disagree with your point, Lalit, when you say revenues are decreasing. I think rate of increase may have decreased, but we are still growing as an industry, and Dr. SANDHYA can vouch on that. I think it's the reskilling part which is getting important with the advent of automation, IoT, cognitive computing, and to all of those technologies adoption, business analysis is at the center stage. For at least the BA community, it's a much, much bigger opportunity than anything that we had in the past. For two reasons. One, the pace of adoption, which means if there are hundreds of companies looking for those adoptions, those are the kind of opportunities we all will latch on to as BAs to deploy the solutions faster. And second, the rate of change which is taking place. It's not just that you have deployed one solution on one change and you're done. You're changing every 6 months now. In fact, we were talking yesterday in the Thought Leadership Forum. It's changing every quarter. So I think it's not about loss of opportunity. It's about reskilling that we need to go through to make sure that we are able to serve our international client base effectively. And for that, I believe there's a tremendous amount of opportunity that we have as business analysis community, because we're in the center stage of that change.
Just to
That's where ecosystem comes in,
answer
right?
both your questions, one with the curriculum piece. That's the reason for the MOU. We will be joining hands. There will be joint certifications so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You will have one certification for the business analysts and the various job roles that are evolving at entry, middle management, etc., so that it will be recognized in India and globally as the same. So all the three bodies will join together on a joint certification. That's the first one. So you don't have to do either or anymore. Or you cannot say, okay, this is one certificate and you have to again map it to another, and you'll have problems for your own self as an individual saying, I've done this. When you move to another country where they recognize the IIBA, then you say, oh, the NASSCOM certificate isn't there. So you're going to have the logos of all the three on the certificate, which makes it easier for you for your own individual mobility. The second point is the job role as described by Faisal. It's a complex job role, a business analyst as of today. It's not as simple. It's not a specialist in one area and a generalist in another. It's a specialist in every area. And they want you to actually be the end-all and God's gift to mankind in this particular job role. Right. So it's really, yes, we are. I agree with you there. So the fact is that you will find that this is highly, highly lucrative. It's absolutely aspirational for those of you who are already employed and want to have an idea what this work is about and how it's impacting, how to be agile. It's not easy to be agile, that you constantly change and still keep focused. So these are things that sometimes come intuitively and cannot be taught. So some of you have it, some of you don't have it. And businesses love people who have it. So that's one aspect. So one, it's going to be a joint certification. Hopefully you're working towards it. The courseware, etc., will not be too disparate. It will be one, so that you don't have to run to company-specific programs, but work as an industry standard, which is the panacea for the globalized world. Second point is it's a very important, personally lucrative job role. And the third is industry per se is really zooming on revenues. There is a temporary, I'm using the words very carefully, a temporary lull in the employment opportunity. That's before we find our feet again. But it's absolutely imperative that we find our feet as industry. Reason being, without a market, there's no product to be sold. So it's important for financial inclusion in everyone's pocket so that you actually are the market for our businesses. So we will find our way. If you have an idea, do contribute. So before we wind up, I think,
yes,
I would like to introduce Mr. Uday Shankar here. Please stand up. He would be my man person here who looks after for all of South India. So please leave, because as John and Stephen are talking, collaboration is the key. If you are siloed, you won't know what the change is. You won't know how to address it. We have to communicate. So put your card in the box, see that you get communicated, and then we can have a different, probably a program to discuss the next time we meet.
Thank you very much. Stephen, last comment.
Okay. Well,
this time I'm going to be the timekeeper.
Okay, well, thank you. I think your comment is really salient in what's taking place here with the MOUs that are being signed for those inquisitive minds that are out there asking, what does this mean to me? Where's industry going? How are you going to support? What is it going to look like? And the way I would embrace it is that it is an evolving process. And we're doing this in parallel with businesses asking and demanding certain skill sets and standards. So rather than it being a challenge, it's a great opportunity for you to challenge businesses as to what it is that you need to support and to be able to accept that standards of practice, to be able to understand where the BA is evolving to, and to look at the sort of dynamic demands of where industry is providing opportunities for employment, where industry is asking for certain standards and skill sets. And I think it's also important for you to recognize that you've got an important voice at the table, whether it's that network, that community, whether it's speaking to NASSCOM or BCS or ourselves, and that's that collaborative component. It really is an opportunity to shape it, and I can only imagine what the BA practice and profession will look like in 10 years from now. So thank you very much, Ashish.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate mind-boggling conversation that we just had, not just on, from a policy and transformation standpoint. I think the scale is massive, and for us to understand what's going on here is very critical. So Dr. Sandhya, thank you very much for being here.
I have one last question. Can I shoot my question?
We are, time up please. Okay. We're already 2 minutes late. Can we do it outside?
Okay.
If that's okay. If we don't do it this way, I'm sorry. We will be creating lags in all our sessions. So I'm sorry to say that. You can blame it on me. Thank you, Stephen and John, for being here and connecting and providing the opportunity to collaborate with you guys. I really appreciate it. Guys, thank you very much. And last words?
I would also like to thank Subramaniam from Pfizer. I think he's shown the way that Pfizer is working on it, and this is exactly what we need all other companies to please, or if you have a viewpoint, but I think we need to put it together. Otherwise, we'll be like the 9 men who touch different parts of the elephant and say this is the whole. I think we need to collaborate. Thank you so much, Mr. Subramaniam.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate it.